June 1944, the Pacific Ocean stretches endlessly beneath a burning tropical sun, calm on the surface, hiding the largest carrier battle ever fought. For the United States, the war has become a steady advance westward, island by island, base by base, closer to Japan itself. The Marianas Islands are next, Saipan, Tinian, Guam. Names that will soon decide the future of the war. For Japan, this is the moment of truth. If the Marianas fall, American B-29 bombers will be able to strike the Japanese home islands directly. Tokyo knows this. The Imperial Navy knows this. And they understand that this battle cannot be lost because there will be no recovery. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commander of Japan's mobile fleet, prepares Operation Ago, a final, decisive gamble. The plan is simple in theory and fatal in practice. Draw the American carriers into range, unleash massed airstrikes, and destroy the enemy fleet in one overwhelming blow. It is a plan built on memories of past victories. Pearl Harbor, the early triumphs of 1941 and 1942, and on a belief that courage and sacrifice can still compensate for material inferiority. But the Pacific War of 1944 is no longer the war Japan remembers. Across the ocean, the U.S. Fifth Fleet waits. 15 aircraft carriers, hundreds of fighters, radar screens glowing in darkened combat information centers. Pilots trained through thousands of flight hours, a Navy shaped not by tradition, but by production lines, logistics, and relentless refinement. The Americans know the Japanese are coming. Long-range submarines have already reported fleet movements. Radio intelligence has revealed fragments of the Japanese plan. And most importantly, radar will see the enemy long before the enemy sees them. This will not be a battle of surprise, it will be a battle of systems. Above the Philippine Sea, two empires move toward collision, one fighting for survival, the other for inevitability. Within 48 hours, the skies will be filled with burning aircraft. Entire squadrons will vanish. Veteran Japanese aviators, the last of their kind, will die in numbers never seen before. Later, American pilots will give the battle a name. They will call it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. But on the morning of June 19, 1944, no one yet understands what that name truly means. In Tokyo, the situation is clear and desperate. By early 1944, the Imperial Japanese Navy has lost the initiative. Its battleships rarely leave port. Its submarine force is being hunted down, and its once feared carrier air arm has been slowly bled dry in battles Japan could not afford to lose. Yet the Marianas offer one final opportunity. Operation Ago is conceived as a decisive battle plan, not defensive, but annihilating. The idea is simple. Allow American forces to approach the Marianas, then strike with every remaining carrier aircraft in a single, massive blow. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa places his faith in numbers and distance. Japanese carrier aircraft, he believes, can strike from farther away than American planes. This range advantage will allow Japan to attack while staying beyond effective retaliation. But this plan rests on fragile assumptions. Ozawa's mobile fleet includes 9 carriers, but many are shadows of what they once were. Aircraft complements are reduced. Replacement planes arrive straight from factories with little testing, and most critically, the pilots themselves are no longer veterans. The elite aviators who shattered Pearl Harbor and dominated the early Pacific War are gone, killed at Midway, lost at Guadalcanal, worn down in months of attritional fighting. In their place stand young men with minimal flight hours, Some have never landed on a carrier at sea. Others have practiced gunnery only a handful of times. They are brave, but bravery does not stop radar-guided fighters. Japanese doctrine still speaks of spirit overcoming technology, of sacrifice compensating for imbalance, of decisive battle restoring the honor of the fleet. But modern air warfare does not reward belief. Fuel shortages limit training. Radar is scarce and unreliable. Communications between carriers and aircraft remain slow and fragmented, and coordination between naval aviation and land-based air forces is little more than hope. Even so, the order is given. All remaining strength is committed. If AGO fails, Japan will have no trained carrier pilots left. No means to contest American air superiority, no shield against what comes next. The fleet sails knowing this. Across thousands of miles of open ocean, aircraft are fueled, engines warmed, and pilots briefed for missions that will stretch beyond the limits of endurance and beyond the limits of survival. Operation AGO is not a plan for victory. It is a wager on destiny, and the house is waiting. By June 1944, the war in the Pacific is no longer a contest of equals. On paper, the two carrier fleets appear similar. Both field dozens of warships. Both launch hundreds of aircraft. Both speak the language of decisive battle. In reality, they belong to different eras of warfare. The American Fifth Fleet represents an industrial system perfected by war. 15 fleet and light carriers operate as a single organism. Every ship is tied into a web of radar, radio, and command centers. Pilots are trained systematically, rotated, evaluated, and replaced. Losses are expected and absorbed. At the heart of this system is information. Radar detects incoming aircraft hundreds of miles away. Combat information centers track targets in real time. Fighters are launched not in panic, but on command, vectored precisely to where they are needed most. The aircraft themselves reflect this philosophy. The F-6F Hellcat is not elegant. It is not light, but it is fast, heavily armored, and brutally effective. It can absorb punishment, dive faster than a Zero, climb hard, and kill at range. Most importantly, it is flown by pilots who know exactly how to use it. Across the sea, the Imperial Japanese Navy operates under a different reality. Japanese carriers still rely on visual detection and delayed reports. Radar coverage is limited and unreliable. Communication between ships and aircraft is slow, fragmented, and often misunderstood. Coordination breaks down the moment combat begins. The Zero, once a symbol of Japanese air supremacy, is now outmatched. Lightly built, underarmed, and unprotected, it demands perfection from its pilot, and perfection is no longer possible. The pilot corps has been hollowed out. In 1941, Japanese naval aviators were among the best trained in the world. By 1944, many replacements have fewer than 100 flight hours. Some have never experienced combat. Others have never landed on a carrier at night. They are sent into battle anyway. This is not a failure of courage. It is a failure of systems. American pilots fight as part of a machine designed to protect them, guide them, and recover them. Japanese pilots fight largely alone, dependent on eyesight, instinct, and fading doctrine. The skies over the Philippine Sea will soon reveal the difference. One fleet fights with coordination, redundancy, and overwhelming control. The other fights with memory. And memory, no matter how glorious, cannot stop what is coming. At dawn on June 19, 1944, the decks of Japan's carriers come alive. Engines roar to life. Deck crews wave aircraft forward. Pilots climb into cockpits slick with sweat and fuel fumes. Many of them know, or at least sense, that this flight will be different from all the others. They are flying farther than ever before. Japanese strike doctrine demands maximum range. To reach the American fleet, aircraft must launch with minimal fuel reserves. There will be little margin for error. A missed approach, a damaged plane, a wrong heading. Any one of these will mean death in the open ocean. Still, they take off. Wave after wave of Japanese aircraft lifts from the decks of Ozawa's carriers. Fighters, dive bombers, torpedo planes, all climbing into the morning sky, forming loose formations that stretch for miles. For many pilots, this is their first combat mission. They have been told this battle will decide the war, that their sacrifice will protect the homeland, that they are the last shield between Japan and annihilation. What they are not told is that the enemy already sees them. Hundreds of miles away, American radar screens light up. Operators track the incoming formations long before the first Japanese pilot spots a carrier on the horizon. Bearings are plotted, altitudes calculated, interceptors assigned. The U.S. fleet does not rush. Fighters remain on deck until the moment is right. Combat information centers calmly direct squadrons into position. Every move is deliberate, every response rehearsed. The Japanese pilots fly on, unaware that the element of surprise, the cornerstone of their doctrine, has already vanished. As the formations push deeper toward the American fleet, small errors begin to multiply. Navigation mistakes, broken radio contact, aircraft straggling behind or drifting off course. Fuel gauges fall faster than expected. Some pilots turn back early, knowing they will never make it home. Others press on, determined to complete their mission even if it costs them everything. Ahead lies the greatest concentration of American naval air power ever assembled. Behind them lies empty ocean. The first wave is committed, and there will be no recall. The first Japanese aircraft never reach the American fleet. They are intercepted far from their targets, high above the open ocean, where there is nowhere to hide and no one to help. Guided by radar and fighter direction officers, American Hellcats climb steadily into position. They do not search the sky. They are sent exactly where the enemy will be. At the appointed moment, the fighters dive. What follows is not a dogfight in the old sense of the word. It is not a contest of skill between equals. It is a one-sided engagement shaped by speed, firepower, and numbers. Hellcats attack from above and behind, slashing through Japanese formations in coordinated passes. 6.50 caliber machine guns tear into lightly built aircraft that were never designed to take punishment. Wings shear off. Fuel tanks ignite. Engines disintegrate. Zeros try to turn and fight, and are cut down before they complete the maneuver. Japanese pilots call out contacts, but their radios are chaotic. There is no central control. No warning of what is coming next. Every pilot is suddenly alone. Some dive for the clouds. Others break formation in panic. A few press forward, convinced that reaching the carriers is the only thing that matters. They are hunted one by one. American pilots later described the sky as crowded with targets. They choose which aircraft to attack. They choose when to fire. They choose when to disengage. The Japanese pilots have no such choices. Within minutes, entire squadrons cease to exist. Formation leaders are killed. Wingmen lose sight of their commanders. Navigation collapses. Aircraft begin turning back. many already too low on fuel to survive the return. Those that do break through the fighter screen face another barrier. Anti-aircraft fire. American carriers and escorts unleash a storm of radar-directed flak. Black bursts fill the sky. Tracers arc upward in dense curtains. Planes that somehow survive the fighters are shredded before they can release weapons. Very few bombs are dropped. Even fewer hit anything. By midday, the pattern is clear. Japanese losses are catastrophic. American losses are minimal. The battle has acquired its name. For the men watching from the American decks, it looks unreal. Aircraft fall burning into the sea in every direction. Parachutes open and drift downward with no hope of rescue. For the Japanese aviators still flying, the truth is undeniable. This is not a battle they can win. It is a slaughter they cannot escape. For the Japanese pilots who flew that morning, the battle was over almost as soon as it began. Many never saw an American aircraft before they were attacked. They were hit from behind, from above, from angles they had never been trained to expect. There was no warning, no time to react, only sudden violence. These men were not cowards. They were victims of time. Most had entered training only months earlier. Their flight hours were measured in dozens, not hundreds. Gunnery practice was limited by fuel shortages. Carrier landings were rushed. Night operations were rare. Some had never fired their guns in combat before June 19th. They flew aircraft that demanded absolute precision. Planes with no armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks, and little tolerance for damage. The Zero had once been a weapon of dominance. Now it was a liability. Against Hellcats, it was a death trap. Japanese doctrine had always emphasized the individual pilot, skill, spirit, aggression. But modern air combat no longer rewarded individual brilliance. It rewarded coordination, information, and survivability. And Japan had lost all three. As formations disintegrated, pilots found themselves alone over endless ocean. Radios failed. Compasses spun uselessly. Fuel gauges dropped toward zero. Some turned back early, knowing they would be criticized, or worse, for abandoning the attack. Others pressed on, driven by training, pride, or simple denial. Many never reached the fleet. Aircraft ran out of fuel and ditched into the sea. Pilots struggled to escape sinking cockpits, weighed down by flight gear and parachutes soaked with water. Few were rescued. Parachutes drifted downward from burning planes, opening over water that offered no mercy. Men waited in life rafts, if they had them, watching the sky empty and the sun climb higher. By afternoon, Japanese carriers waited for planes that would never return. Deck crews stood by with crash nets and fire hoses. Landing signals were given again and again. To empty sky. Fuel remained unused. Ammunition untouched. When the count was finally made, entire air groups were gone. Not damaged. Gone. What had taken years to train had been destroyed in hours. For the Imperial Japanese Navy, this was not merely a defeat. It was the end of carrier aviation as an effective fighting force. For the men who flew that day, there would be no medals, no stories of heroism, no chance to learn from mistakes. Only the ocean. When night falls on June 19th, the battle is not over. The sky has gone quiet, but the ocean is still alive with tension. Both fleets know that dawn will bring another reckoning. The difference is that only one side still has the means to fight. Admiral Ozawa understands the truth before sunrise. His carrier air groups are shattered. The losses are beyond repair, but his fleet itself is still afloat, and that means it is still a target. He turns west, attempting to withdraw under cover of darkness. The Japanese carriers steam through the night, conserving fuel, maintaining radio silence, hoping distance will protect them. What Ozawa does not fully grasp is that distance no longer matters. At first light on June 20th, American search aircraft fan out across the Philippine Sea. They fly at extreme range, pushing their fuel limits, scanning endless blue for signs of the retreating enemy. For hours, nothing. Then, late in the afternoon, a contact report breaks the silence. Japanese carriers. Far away. Almost too far. The range is extreme, beyond what American pilots normally consider safe. A strike launched now may not have enough fuel to return. Many aircraft will have to land in darkness. Some will ditch at sea. Admiral Mark Mitcher makes his decision. He orders the strike anyway. Hundreds of aircraft lift off into the fading daylight. Fighters, bombers, torpedo planes, flying farther than planned, driven by urgency and momentum. The goal is no longer decisive battle. It is destruction. The American strike finds the Japanese fleet just as the sun begins to sink. The attack is chaotic, hurried, imperfect, but overwhelming. Bombs slam into flight decks. Fires erupt. Torpedoes tear into hulls already strained by months of war. The carriers Hyo and Shokaku are mortally wounded. Others are damaged, burning, slowed. As darkness falls, American pilots turn for home, many with fuel gauges near zero. What follows is one of the most dangerous moments of the war. Carriers switch on deck lights, violating every rule of combat security, risking submarine attack to save their pilots. Aircraft land blindly, crash, slide off decks, or ditch alongside ships. Rescue crews work through the night, pulling men from black water illuminated by burning fuel and flares. The second day ends not with precision, but with exhaustion. Japan has lost what remains of its carrier striking power. America has proven something just as important. There is no longer a safe distance. When the smoke clears over the Philippine Sea, the truth becomes impossible to hide. The Imperial Japanese Navy still has ships. It still has flags flying from carrier masts. But what made those ships dangerous, the trained men and aircraft, is gone. In 2 days of fighting, Japan has lost the heart of its naval aviation. More than 400 carrier aircraft have been destroyed. Most were not shot down over enemy decks, but far from their targets, scattered across hundreds of miles of ocean, burning, sinking, vanishing without witnesses. The losses are not just numerical, they are irreversible. Japan no longer possesses a pilot training system capable of replacing what has been lost. Fuel shortages have already crippled flight schools. Experienced instructors are dead. Carrier qualification has become theoretical rather than practical. New pilots will still be trained, but they will never reach the standard required for modern carrier warfare. The carriers themselves tell the story. Taiho, Japan's newest and most advanced carrier, is gone, sunk by a single submarine torpedo and catastrophic internal explosions. Shokaku, veteran of Pearl Harbor, lies beneath the sea. Hyo burns and sinks after air attack. Other carriers survive, but as hollow shells, decks intact, air groups erased. For the first time in the war, Japanese carrier commanders understand a brutal reality. Their ships are now little more than targets. Without air cover, they cannot approach enemy forces. Without trained pilots, they cannot defend themselves. Without fuel, they cannot even train the men who remain. Across the ocean, American carriers recover their aircraft, repair damage, and prepare for the next operation. The contrast is absolute. The U.S. Navy has not merely won a battle, It has destroyed an entire method of warfare. From this point forward, Japanese carriers will never again fight as an integrated striking force. They will appear occasionally, as decoys, as sacrificial platforms, as desperate measures, but never as the core of a fleet. The age of the Japanese carrier navy ends here, not with a single explosion, but with empty decks and silent radios. When the battle is finally tallied, the numbers tell a story no rhetoric can soften. In 2 days over the Philippine Sea, Japan loses more than 400 aircraft. Entire carrier air groups are erased. Some squadrons return with fewer than 5 planes. Others do not return at all. American losses amount to fewer than 100 aircraft, many of them not shot down in combat, but lost to fuel exhaustion during night recoveries. Most pilots survive. Most planes are replaced within weeks. The imbalance is staggering. For every American aircraft destroyed, Japan loses 4, sometimes 5. For every experienced American pilot lost, Japan loses dozens it cannot replace. Before June 1944, the Imperial Japanese Navy still believes it can fight a decisive carrier battle. After June 1944, that belief quietly dies. The statistics reveal something deeper than victory. They reveal transformation. The U.S. Navy fights with layers: radar detection, fighter direction, interception, anti-aircraft fire, rescue systems, logistics. Each layer absorbs failure and corrects it. Japan fights linearly. Once the first layer breaks, everything collapses. This battle proves that air warfare has become industrial. Training hours matter, replacement pipelines matter, survivability matters, information matters. Heroism alone does not. Japanese planners had expected losses. They had even expected heavy losses. What they had not imagined was annihilation at this scale. Carrier aviation is not just damage, it is mathematically destroyed. Even if Japan had ships, even if fuel were available, even if factories could build aircraft, there are no pilots left to fly them effectively. The Marianas become the point of no return. From this moment forward, American carrier forces operate with near impunity. The skies above the Pacific tilt permanently in one direction. Within months, American bombers will be striking the Japanese home islands from bases captured as a direct result of this battle. The war does not end here, but its outcome is no longer in doubt. The numbers have decided it. The name did not come from headquarters, it came from the pilots. When the last aircraft were recovered and the final tallies compiled, American aviators struggled to describe what they had witnessed. It had not felt like a battle in the traditional sense. There was danger, fear, exhaustion, but little uncertainty. Targets appeared exactly where radar predicted. Intercepts unfolded as brief, violent encounters. Japanese aircraft arrived in waves and disappeared just as quickly. One pilot said it felt like shooting at targets on a range. Another used a phrase that would stick: a turkey shoot. The term spread through ready rooms and after-action reports, capturing the uncomfortable truth of the engagement. It was not meant as mockery. It was a recognition of imbalance, of a fight decided before the first shot was fired. For the Japanese aviators, there was nothing theatrical about it. They flew into a sky already owned by the enemy, guided by systems they could not see, opposed by aircraft they could not outrun, and hunted by pilots trained to exploit every advantage. For the Americans, the battle confirmed something that had been building for years. This was what modern war looked like. Victory no longer depended on daring alone. It depended on preparation measured in factories, classrooms, and control rooms. It depended on logistics as much as courage, on redundancy as much as skill. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot marked the end of an era. It was the last time Japan attempted to contest American air power with carrier aviation. From this point forward, the Imperial Navy would fight defensively, with decoys, with desperation, with sacrifice, but never again with equality. The skies over the Pacific would belong to the United States. Within months, American bombers would appear over Japan itself. The Marianas, paid for in aircraft and lives, became launch pads for the final phase of the war. The men who flew in June 1944 would remember the battle differently, some with pride, some with disbelief, some with a quiet sense of unease at how lopsided it had been. History would remember it as a turning point, not because it was dramatic, but because it was decisive. The moment when one side realized the war could still be fought, and the other realized it could only be endured.